Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Being at the Surface, where we focus on political, social and Islamic issues. Today we'll be discussing Wiladat Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and joining us on the show is an Islamic lecturer, SayidZafarAbbas. Thank you very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
We'd like to first look at Imam al-Baqir, his name first. How come he was called al-Baqir?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin. Our fifth holy Imam is the second Muhammad in the line of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and the first amongst the Aimma alayhi salam. And in many ways, inshallah, we'll look at his life mirrors the life of the Holy Prophet of Islam as well. He was born on, according to most accounts, on the 1st of Rajab in 57 after Hijrah, and was martyred, shaheed, also at Medina, and 114 after Hijrah in the month of Dhul Hijjah. Therefore, he lived for 57 years. And with regards to our fifth holy Imam, it's actually very easy to remember. He's the fifth Imam and the seventh infallible, and he's born in 57 and he lives for 57 years. So this is our fifth holy Imam, and he has a very interesting time when he's born and when he grows up, because of course this is the time or the year that he's born is the years in which the Banu Umayyah are coming to power. They're assuming the power. And in fact, he's the first of our Aimma alayhi salam to spend his whole life in the time where Banu Umayyah have been in power. And in fact, the only one, because our sixth holy Imam, of course, then spends time after the demise of the Umayyad Empire. So he's the only one who lives in this particular time, and it's a very difficult time in some ways for the followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and in other ways it's a very interesting time because it's a time of development. He's called al-Baqir because, and the reason why I've mentioned all this context is because he's called al-Baqir because of this context that he happens to be in. The context, of course, is that he was 3 or 4 years old at the time of the event of Karbala, and the event of Karbala has totally transformed the Muslim empire. People are now seeing the Khalifa, the Khilafah, and the Ummah as a whole very differently. They're seeing that, this event of this kind of magnitude happened, and yet nobody even stood up against it. The few people who stood against it were also killed, so on and so forth. But over time, by the time our fifth holy Imam assumes the office of Imamat, there's a very big difference in the situation, or in the reasoning, or in the way that people are thinking. And that is, of course, because of the work of our fourth holy Imam, Salamullah alayh, and the way that he's preserved this message to go on. So our fifth holy Imam is also now an eyewitness of the event of Karbala. He's an eyewitness of what happens after Karbala. And now he's in this period of time where the Banu Umayyah are now going towards decline. And he takes this opportunity. He is the first Imam out of all of the Imams, Salamullah alayhima, to begin preaching in the Masjid of the Holy Prophet of Islam. Of course, Amirul Mu'mineen had left Medina to go to Kufa. Imam Hassan alayhi salam also spent time in Kufa. Then they came back towards Medina. Imam Hassan came back, and Imam Hussein and Imam Sajjad. But there was no open preaching in the Masjid of the Holy Prophet of Islam from the Aimma alayhi salam up until that point. For whatever reason, there's different reasonings behind that. But our fifth holy Imam was the first one after the Holy Prophet of Islam, and this is why I said, and in some ways his life mirrors the Holy Prophet of Islam's life. That he now, again in the Masjid of the Holy Prophet of Islam, begins preaching the message of Islam. And al-Baqir, the word, or the formation of the word, is used for in different contexts. If we look towards the dictionaries, we'll find that al-Baqir is one of the meanings that has been mentioned is with regards to when the lion attacks the prey and it tears open the prey. And then it eats it. So that state of the lion is called al-baqir. In addition to that, of course, it is also been mentioned that when something splits open, then that is also called baqir in the same context. And it's also been used in the context of agriculture as well, when the earth splits open for the seed to be placed in it and then the crop to grow. So Imam alayhi salatu wasalam in that regard is the one who is al-baqir al-ulum, the one who splits open this knowledge that is there. But there's up until this point, there's also a need to mention that this is now the time where people are now interested in seeking knowledge. They really want to know about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They want to know about the other sciences. And so Imam alayhi salatu wasalam takes this opportunity, stands in the masjid and preaches not only the religious sciences, not only the sciences with regards to our deen, but also the sciences which we might call the worldly sciences. He's also talking about those kinds of ulum as well. And so that's why the complete title of our fifth holy Imam, al-Baqir al-Ulum, that he's the one who splits open this knowledge. The knowledge is already there. He just splits it open, he disseminates it, he spreads it out to people. And this is the knowledge, of course, of the Prophets Salamullah alayhima, who've come before. And this is really key, because it shows us that the Imam Salamullah alayhi is how much emphasis he's placed on this particular area and how important really this is. And we see this in examples in his life as well, of how much importance he places on the actual seeking of knowledge, on the dissemination of knowledge, and how much effort he puts into that. But this is only, of course, possible because of, number one, the environment that Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam has created, and the fact that the Khalifa is now no longer so actively looking at the Imam Salamullah alayhi, or actively being spying on the Imam alayhi salatu wasalam, because of their own difficulties and their own situation that they happen to find themselves in. So because of this opportunity, the Imam Salamullah takes this opportunity to disseminate the knowledge, and this is why it's called Baqir al-Ulum al-Nabi.
But in addition, there's the Shias believe that the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, he's the one that named al-Baqir alayhi salam. Can you tell us a bit more about that, and how Jabir al-Ansari knew about Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam?
Yes, this is a very interesting story, episode if you like, which has been mentioned in the tafsir, a very famous verse of the Holy Quran. In Surah Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ati'u Allaha wa ati'u Rasula wa ulil amri minkum. And when this verse was revealed, Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari asked the Holy Prophet of Islam, he says, Ya Rasulullah, we know who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, so we will obey him. And we know who you are, and so we will obey you. But who are the ulil amr? Who are the people of the amr? Who are the people of the command? And so the Holy Prophet of Islam said, it is Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, and after him will be Hassan, and after him will be Hussein, who all of them are present in front of you. And after Hussein it will be Ali ibn Hussein. And after him will be Muhammad, who, or rather the narration says, who have the same name as me, and he will be called al-Baqir, and you will meet him, so send him my salam. And of course it is very well known that Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari is according to most narratives, the oldest or the longest surviving companion of the Holy Prophet of Islam. He remains alive until that time, and nearly all the companions have passed away at this point. And he has become blind, he's very old. Of course he's witnessed all these things from the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Imam Hassan, the Battle of Karbala. He's the first person to visit Imam Hussein in Karbala. And then he's living in Medina, and he's become old and he's blind, and people think he's gone senile because he goes around the streets of Medina saying, Aina Muhammad, Aina Muhammad. And then one day when he comes across our fifth holy Imam, he says salam to him, and he conveys this message. So the Imam asks him, how did you recognize me when you become blind? And Jabir says that you have the same scent coming from you which Rasulullah used to have. And that's how I recognize that you are the one. And then there's a conversation between Imam and Jabir, very famous conversation where the Imam Salamullah alayhi gives him the characteristics of the Shia of Imam alayhi salatu wasalam. He says that there are many people who claim to love us, who claim to follow us, but the real Shia are these people, and he gives a list of these characteristics of the way that they act and the way that they are and how they deal with other people, so on and so forth. And it's a very valuable advice that he gives to Jabir. So this is the naming, and of course in this narrative that from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, the Holy Prophet of Islam had named all 12 of the Aimma alayhim salam. And of course, this is one of the evidences that followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam used to present the fact that the Holy Prophet of Islam had named all of his successors up to the Qa'im, Ajjallahu ta'ala faraju sharif, and that then there's no doubt and any question remaining with regards to who should have been the Aimma alayhim salam. At least in the case of Jabir, who knew totally who all the Aimma alayhim salam were, and the Holy Prophet had mentioned this with regards to this particular verse of the Holy Quran.
But then with that, when Zain al-Abidin alayhi salatu wasalam passed away, many people believed that it shouldn't actually be Imam al-Baqir, and they actually went with his son Zayd, and this is where the Zaydiyya sect emerged. From that, because it's happened with most of our other Imams as well, where instead of taking the Imams that we believe in, and we believe are the 12, there would be a few branches from that. From the Zaydiyya, how come the people actually believed it was him, even though Jabir al-Ansari said and was very clear of what the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said?
There's a principle in the theology of the Zaydiyya, which states that the person who is to be the Imam has to be the one who wages war against the oppressors. And it's not necessary for that person to be the best person of his time. In other words, it's possible for there to be a person who's better than him. But because he wages war against the oppressors of his time, he will be the Imam, even though there is a person better than him.
So kind of like be following the footsteps of Imam Hussein alayhi salam.
Salamullah. So, based on this principle of the Zaydiyya, they rejected Imam Hassan alayhi salam as an Imam because he didn't wage war. And then they believed in Zayd as the Imam because he waged war against the Umayyads. And they acknowledge, in fact, when the Imamiyya came forward and said that Imam al-Baqir salamullah alayhi is superior to Zayd, and Zayd himself acknowledges that Imam al-Baqir is superior to him. They said that this is not a necessity. In our theology, it's not a necessity for a person who is superior to be the Imam. In other words, we recognize that Imam Muhammad al-Baqir is superior to Zayd, because it's well known that he is, and Zayd also acknowledges that. But because Zayd had gone to war, therefore we consider him the Imam. And of course this theology emerges later on after Zayd salamullah alayhi has been killed, because Zayd himself was not a believer of this theology, nor did he wage war to claim the imamate for himself. It was, in fact, he had waged war because he was he could not bear the oppression towards his family members anymore, and therefore he waged war. His war, his going to war, is attacking the Umayyads, was nothing to do with the claim towards imamate. But later on, people who fought in his army, because of course 10,000 people had joined his army, and many of those people were not followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. In other words, there were people from schools, in other schools in religion of Islam, who were part of the army of Zayd. And later, after Zayd had been killed, and those people also with him had been killed, then later on people claimed this theology and attributed it towards Zayd alayhi salam. So with regards to Zayd himself, we have many narrations from Imam al-Baqir and from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam with regards to his ziyarah, with regards to his greatness, and may Allah have mercy upon our uncle Zayd, who rose against the oppressors, because he never claimed to be the Imam himself. It was later on that people claimed that he was the Imam based on this principle, which is a principle of the Zaydiyya theology that exists even today, that a person who is an Imam has to wage war against the oppressor.
But then with that, because there was a narration by Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, where he said to the people that you going by this principle and by this theology is actually against the whole principle of the Ahlul Bayt and of the Imams, because it's not about war and it's not about just fighting oppression. There's, if that was the situation, then his actual father, Zainul Abidin, wouldn't be considered an Imam. So with that, weren't the people convinced? Was it just about war and oppression for them, fighting oppression?
I guess in this regard, in fact, later theology has claimed that according to their accounts, they reject the accounts that are well known with regards to Karbala, and they actually state that Imam Zainul Abidin was not unwell and that he fought in the Battle of Karbala, but he survived. And therefore he fits the principle of waging war. So that is one reasoning that they've presented. But the other thing is, of course, that sometimes there's other reasoning behind why people want to go towards a different theology. Maybe it's to do with power or influence or wealth or such other things. And therefore, these kinds of theologies take currency or credence from these kind of principles. And later on, of course, the Zaydiyya theology has undergone different kinds of reformations as well, as with other theologies. So this is the principle that they brought forward to not believe in Imam Muhammad al-Baqir alayhi salam, because they brought this principle about fighting oppression, and they insisted on it and said that even if somebody is better, then we don't need to believe in that person as the Imam. And that really was the principle of what they were about, and what they continue to be about. The Zaydiyya principle is that fighting oppression is more important than anything else in the religion.
But then, as you mentioned Karbala, as you mentioned Karbala, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, he was around the age of 3 to 4 while he was there, and he witnessed the actual battle, and he was also taken to Kufa and Sham and went back to Medina at the time. With that, do you believe the event of Karbala actually made him a stronger leader?
I think that definitely there's a wisdom of why Imam Hussein alayhi salatu salam had brought, in addition to the people who were going to fight, the women and the children with him. And amongst those things, of course, making somebody stronger, putting them through a difficult test in that stage of their life, but also because Imam Hussein alayhi salam knows that Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam is going to be the longest surviving person after this battle. And therefore, he will be able to relate things as an eyewitness and not somebody who heard something from somebody or related it from somebody else. No, but he actually was our eyewitness to what actually had happened. And of course, the purpose of the Battle of Karbala was never the day of Ashura itself. The purpose of the Battle of Karbala was to take this message of Ashura to the furthest point possible. And for that, Imam Hussein alayhi salam has brought all these people with him, because he knows, the women and the children are not going to fight. The women and the children are not there for any kind of war, methodology, but they're there so that they can preserve everything that happens and go back, and then be the proponents of spreading that message forward. So undoubtedly, Imam al-Baqir salamullahi's presence there is very important, because he's going to live the longest after Karbala, but also because it then gives him an insight into how to or how different situations will demand different things from him. And this is exhibited in the lives of all of our Imams alayhi salam, where we see that even though their purpose is the same, but because of their different situations that they happen to be in, the way that they achieve their purpose or the methodology in which to get to that purpose is different. Each Imam has a particular different way of preaching the message of Islam. It's the same preaching, it's the same Islam, but they're doing it in different ways because of the situation that they find themselves in. So Imam Abidin, for example, becomes the Imam at that difficult time, and Imam al-Baqir salamullahi alayhi is a witness to that. And not only is a witness to that, but he's going through that difficult time as well. So that when it comes to the good times, he can tell them, look, I experienced the good times, but I've also gone through this calamity, I've also gone through this difficulty. And so I know what it is like for a person to go through difficulty, and then to come to this stage where I am now. And that is very important, because a person who goes through the calamity and goes through a difficulty early in their life will definitely become a stronger person. So not only is he a witness of what's happened to Karbala, but he's also showing us how to deal with these different situations, and how different situations will demand different
acts and
different responsibilities.
During the time of Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, and while he was the Imam, there was a very political situation at the time. Can you explain that to us, and how that situation actually helped him spread Islam?
So Imam al-Baqir salam, as we mentioned, is living in the time where the Umayyad Empire is going towards its decline. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam is killed in 95 after Hijrah, and Imam al-Baqir from 95 to 114, period of almost 20 years that his imamate continues. And in this period of time, it is a time where the Umayyads have really lost control of the empire. You know, it will survive until 133, but these final few decades where the Khalifa is there, but he's really not exerting any kind of influence or power or real kind of authority over the people. The people are tired of the fact that the Khalifa lives a life of decadence, of luxury, while they are going through difficult times. And so therefore the legitimacy of the Khilafat is very, or has gone into question. So during this time, Imam Salawatullah alayhi preaches the message, or is allowed, or has a capability to preach this message without having any interference from the government, who are clinging on to survive in their own right. It is also a time where various different groups of people are also coming to interact with the Muslims. So up until this point, of course, Islam was restricted to Mecca and Medina, but now, of course, Islam has spread a lot further. Muslims are living in different lands. Of course, under the Umayyads, Damascus is the capital of the Muslim world, and of course even further than that. So even parts of what is today modern day Iraq, Jordan and Palestine, all these areas are areas where Muslims have now reached and Muslims are residing. And of course, when Muslims have reached there and Muslims have resided there, there are already people living there and they're following different religions. So now they're interacting with people from different religions probably for the first time. You know, in the time of the Holy Prophet had invited people to come. But after the Holy Prophet of Islam, there was much consolidation going on. So there was not much interaction with people of different religions. But in this time, there is now a lot more interaction with people from different religions that's going on. And that leads to lots of discussions, lots of debates, lots of questions that Muslims have to ask themselves. In this regard, there's a very interesting story which is related from our sixth holy Imam about his father, Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, where he mentions that on one occasion we were summoned to Damascus to the Khalifa's palace. Story also very famous that the Khalifa had invited Hisham ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, had invited the fifth holy Imam and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam also to the palace, and when he came to the palace, Hisham was practicing his archery. So he stopped and he asked the Imam to fire an arrow as well. And Imam alayhi salam said to him that I have become old. This is a sport for the young people, and it is better if young people do. So Hisham insists and he says, I've heard about the fame of the bravery of Banu Hashim. So I want you to fire an arrow. So Imam Sallallahu Alaihi fires an arrow, and the arrow hits the target. Of course, Hisham had been firing arrows for the past few hours and he had not managed to hit the target. So he hits the target, and of course Hisham thinks maybe it's a coincidence that the Imam has hit the target. So he invites him to fire another arrow, and the narrative states that Imam Sallallahu Alaihi fired 200 arrows, and each one would pierce the first and hit the target. So once this had taken place, the Imam Sallallahu Alaihi comes out of the palace, and when they come out of the palace, they notice that there's a large group of people going up towards the mountain. So the Imam asks the question, he says to these people, he says, where are they all going? So he's told that there's a monk who has come from outside of the city, and he is sitting there on top of the mountain, and whatever question you ask him, he has an answer for it. So everyone's going there to get answers to their questions. So the Imam says, okay, let me go there as well. So one of the narratives states that the Imam disguises himself so that he is not recognized. And he goes and he sits down where the monk is giving answers to questions, and there's a large group of people and the monk is speaking. And then as soon as the Imam goes there and sits down, the monk who has been speaking fine up until now begins to stutter. And then he stops and he looks around and he says that I feel that there's somebody present here who knows more than me, who is more knowledgeable than me. So he looks around and he sees his usual people, and then he sees the Imam who is sitting there disguised. So he thinks that must be the person. So he invites the Imam to come, and he says that, who are you, where are you from, so on and so forth. He asks the Imam. So he asks, are you from my nation, or are you Ummat al-Marhuma, from the nation of the Holy Prophet of Islam? And the Imam says, I'm from Ummat al-Marhuma, I'm from the nation of the Holy Prophet. Then he asks a really interesting question, in which is really the essence of this whole story, where the monk says to the Imam, Sallallahu Alaihi, are you from the knowledgeable ones, from the nation of the Holy Prophet, or are you from the ignorant ones? And now, of course, if this question was asked to an ordinary person, we would not hesitate in saying we are from the knowledgeable ones. But the Imam gives a very interesting reply. And he doesn't say, I'm from the knowledgeable ones. He says, I'm not from the ignorant ones. And this is very interesting because for two reasons. For one, of course, it shows the humility of the Imam. It shows the fact that the Imam Salamullah Alayhi is teaching us how to stay away from takabbur and arrogance and pride and all these illnesses of the soul. But also it's telling us that if Imam Salamullah Alayhi, for example, had said that I'm from the knowledgeable ones, then the next question that is inevitable that anybody will ask is that what are you knowledgeable about? Whereas Imam Salamullah Alayhi says that, no, I didn't say I'm from the knowledgeable ones, because he would have asked me, what are you knowledgeable about? And therefore I said, I'm not from the ignorant ones. In other words, I'm not ignorant of anything that you will ask me. So when he hears this answer, he's very impressed, and he says to the Imam Salamullah Alayhi that, shall I ask the questions, or will you ask the questions? So Imam says, ask your questions. So he asks the question, he says that there is a time in 24 hours which is neither considered the day nor the night. What is that time? So Imam Sallallahu Alaihi says that time is the time of Fajr al-Sadiq. The time of Fajr al-Sadiq, the time where the beginning of the Fajr prayer is the time which is neither considered part of the night nor considered part of the day. Because of course it is not considered part of the night because it
The sun is going to be
because
rising.
the sun is about to come out. But it's still not considered part of the day because it's before sunrise. And the Imam says that the reason why this time of day is so special is that at that time there is a special wind which blows, a breeze which comes from paradise. And that is the breeze, and the evidence for that breeze is that there will be people who will be ill, or they will be unable to have slept the whole night, and at that time, because of that breeze, they will be able to sleep. And that breeze will give them shifa, will give them raha, will give them comfort. And then he asks some questions about the people of paradise. So he asks, for example, that the people of paradise, you say, will eat and drink, but they will not need to excrete. So he says that, how is it that this is possible, that a person eats and drinks or doesn't? So Imam says, you have an example of this in the dunya. You see an example of this thing in the dunya. So he says, what is the example of this in the dunya? The Imam says, have you not seen that the embryo, it eats and it drinks in the womb, but it does not need to excrete. So just as in the dunya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do this, in the akhirah He can also do something similar. So then Imam says that, then he asks, he says that you claim that in paradise people will eat and drink as much as they want, but it will not decrease. And how is this possible that people will eat and drink whatever they want, but it doesn't decrease? So Imam says to him again, he says, do you have an example of this in the dunya? The example of this in the dunya is that of the candle, that it gives light to other candles, but its own lamp or its own flame doesn't decrease. In fact, in some cases it increases. But it doesn't decrease, even though it's been able to give light to all the other candles. Imam Salamullah alayhi, conversation is very long. In the end of the conversation, the person acknowledges and he says that this person, this man, is more knowledgeable than me, he is more wise than me. I don't have the answers to his questions. And he had all the answers to mine. And so when he finds out that the Imam Salamullah alayhi, he's the Imam, representing the Holy Prophet, he pledges allegiance to him and he says that I acknowledge that you are the representative of Allah in this particular time. So what this story or stories like these demonstrate for us is the value of having the dialogue, having a conversation with people, the value of telling people. You know, in this whole story, the Imam Salamullah alayhi did not at any time tell him that you should become Muslim. In fact, they didn't talk about any matter of theology at all. The monk had asked him questions about things in paradise and the Imam replied to him. And that was enough to convince him to come towards the school of Ahlul Bayt. But what is interesting in this regard is that tabligh doesn't mean for me to go out with the megaphone and shout at people and tell them that they have to become Muslims, otherwise they're going to go to hell. Because the Imam Salamullah alayhi didn't do that.
None of the Imams did.
The Imam Salamullah alayhi never in any time told people that if they didn't believe they were going to go to hell. But some people in this time think that that's the way to bring people towards Islam. But we are fortunate that we have examples from the A'immah alayhi to give us the insight into this regard and tell us that, you know, this is the way to do tabligh, this is the way to bring people closer towards the school of Ahlul Bayt alayhi and at all times remaining the adab, remaining the etiquette, the akhlaq in the dialogue. So there's never an occasion where somebody could object to the way that the Imam spoke to somebody, the way that the Imam came across to somebody. No, in all times the Imam Salamullah alayhi kept his akhlaq, kept his adab, kept the honor and the dignity of the conversation, and at the end of the conversation brought this person towards the school of Ahlul Bayt. So this is the key, especially in our times, especially times where we're living in a non-Muslim society. that we have to maintain this character, maintain this way of doing things, this usloob, this way that the Imam Salamullahi alayhima did, and they showed us that this is how we need to do it. So even in these difficult times, Imam Salamullahi alayhi brings forward these examples, he brings forward these dialogues, these discussions, to show that our purpose is the same. From the time of the Holy Prophet to this time, the purpose is the same. Our purpose is we will do whatever we need to do in order to preserve the message of Islam and take it forward. And depending on the society, depending on the place we are, that will vary from time to time, place to place, situation to situation, but the purpose will be the same. And that is the important thing that we have to take from all of our A'immah, that they focused on the purpose and they didn't focus on the means. And therefore, similarly, we have to focus on the purpose and not on the means. You know, there will be new means, there will be old means. Means will change in different times. Times will change, situations will change, people will change. But the purpose cannot change.
That is true, Sayyidina. But then with the current situation in the UK, for example, and when we talk about the changes and we keep saying, and Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam has also said that every time and every place you would handle something differently according, of course, to the situation, which our maraja are there to help us with and support us. But then when we're to look at knowledge, for example, all of our imams have focused on knowledge and focused on the importance of seeking knowledge. How can we, from Imam al-Baqir alayhi salam, learn and follow in his footsteps when we seek knowledge and want knowledge?
So we have these narrations from Holy Prophet of Islam and from A'immah alayhi salam about knowledge. When they're asked about knowledge, for example, I believe this is from the Holy Prophet of Islam, where he says that al-ilmu nurun. Knowledge is not learning, or is not kathratul kitaba or kathratul qara'a, for example. Al-ilmu nurun. And knowledge is a light, it's an illumination in a person's heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives it to whosoever He desires. That's not an invitation for me not to seek knowledge. It is to remind me that my focus is not reading lots of books. My focus is not learning lots of information. That's not knowledge. Knowledge is for me to remain sincere to my seeking of this particular thing, because it's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that will tell us that the essence of all of our actions, in fact the essence of everything, is in ikhlas, is in sincerity. So when seeking anything, whether that's seeking something from the dunya or it's seeking for the akhirah, then I have to focus on the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is my priority. Imam Salamullahi alayhim have all demonstrated to us that this is what we are. That your priority has to be on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Your priority has to be that you're doing this to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not doing this for my rizq, or I'm not doing this for my fame or honor, or so that people respect me, or so that I can be arrogant over it. No, I'm doing this because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to do it, and I want to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through this means. So of course, if that then brings me worldly benefits as well, alhamdulillah, but that's not the purpose of what I'm doing. So in that sense, then, that we have to focus on making sure and keep on reminding ourselves that my focus is on ikhlas, is on doing this only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'm not doing this for anybody else. I'm only doing it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He will bring assistance to me in this particular matter. And that way we will be able to be successful in this endeavor. And whatever we do, this is a reminder from our great ulama as well, and it's also mentioned that rawayat, any mubah action, if it's done with the niyyah of getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, will become an act of thawab as well, an act of reward. So whatever I'm seeking knowledge, even the worldly knowledge that I'm seeking, if I do that with that niyyah of seeking closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that learning and that earning and all the things that I'm doing will also become ibadah, because I've attributed it towards getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that sense, it's important for me to remember that this is what the Imam Salamullahi alayhim, they all did it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They didn't do it for the dunya, they didn't do it for the people, because they knew the people will not or cannot give them any reward for what they're doing. Therefore they did it only for Allah. And that is what I have to remember as well. That is a continual reminder that I'm only doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to get His pleasure, and nothing else.
Inshallah, we all actually go by that. And when seeking knowledge, the knowledge actually does go into our heart, as that's the most important thing. Thank you very much for joining us again on the show. And thank you very much for watching Beneath the Surface. See you next time.